You are not crazy. You are not lazy. And no, you are not just bad with money. You're working harder than ever. You're probably making more money than your parents did at your age. And somehow, you still feel broke. Why? Because the money itself is broken. That's the part nobody wants to say out loud. They want you to think the problem is your budget, your coffee, your self-control, your mindset. No, the problem is that the measuring stick is shrinking while they keep pretending it's the same length. That is inflation. Inflation is the silent killer because it doesn't kick your door in. It doesn't send you a bill labeled robbery. It doesn't flash red lights. It just quietly drains the buying power out of every dollar you save. And while that sounds dramatic, the math is embarrassingly simple. If prices rise faster than your cash grows, you are losing, not emotionally, mathematically. Now, let's talk about the place most people are told to keep their money safe, the bank. Let me say this clearly. Banks are lying when they sell you the fairy tale that a savings account is safe in any meaningful long-term sense. Nominally, sure, your balance doesn't vanish overnight, but in the real world, in purchasing power terms, that money is getting mugged in day-bright light. As of March 2026, the FDIC's national average savings rate was 0.39%. Meanwhile, the latest CPI report showed inflation running 2.4% over the prior 12 months. So if your money is growing at 0.39% while your cost of living rises 2.4%, the system is skimming your future in slow motion. Let me make that visceral. Say you park $10,000 in an average savings account and do nothing for 10 years. At 0.39%, you'd have about $10,400 on paper. Looks responsible, looks disciplined, looks safe. But if inflation runs 2.4%, the cost of living rises by about 26.7% over that same stretch. So your $10,400 would only buy what about $8,200 buys today. That gap, that silent decay, he's robbing you. And the most insulting part is this: the system will congratulate you for being responsible while it drains you. That's why this video matters, because if you still think the game is earn, save cash, and wait, you are playing a game designed to make you feel secure while you get poured. Now let's pull back the curtain. Let's compare 1980 versus 2026. Not vibes, not nostalgia, math. In 1980, the annual average CPI-U was 82.4. In the latest February 2026 reading, the CPI index hit 326.855. That means prices are roughly 3.97 times higher now than they were in 1980. So here's the translation nobody says loudly enough. $100 in 1980 had the buying power of about $396 in 2026. Flip that around, and it gets uglier. $100 today buys what roughly $25 bought in 1980. Read that again. A modern $100 bill walks into the economy with the muscle of an old $25. That's why the split screen works so well, because people can feel this before they can explain it. In 1980, a $100 grocery run felt like a mission. You came home with bags, weight, options, a cart that looked like provision. Today, you can drop $100 and somehow leave the store with a receipt long enough to use as a scarf and a bag that feels emotionally insulting. And yes, I know some economist in the comments is going to say, actually, consumer baskets have changed. Cool, that changes nothing about the core point. Your dollars do not carry the same force. Their face value stayed the same, their function did not. That's the scam. And this is where inflation stops being an economics lesson and starts becoming a family systems problem. Because when one paycheck loses purchasing power year after year, the household has to adapt. This is how we get the two-income trap, not because families became greedier, not because people suddenly got more materialistic, because one income got weaker. Even a Bureau of Labor Statistics report from 1981 said that relatively high inflation was one factor contributing to rising labor force activity among mothers, and by March 1980, 53% of children under 18 had mothers in the labor force. That is a massive clue. The system didn't just make things more expensive, it changed the structure of survival. One income used to build a household. Now, two incomes often just defend it. And here's the sick joke. People look at the second income and think that should be thriving. But if the currency itself has been hollowed out, then two incomes don't feel like abundance. They feel like oxygen. That's why so many households today are what I call broker than one. Two adults, two incomes, one permanent feeling of financial pressure. Because if the dollar keeps losing strength, more effort doesn't automatically become more progress. It can just become more exhaustion. Now let's get into the part that really traps people, because this is not just a math problem, it's a brain problem. Your brain is running old software. That's why your brain is broke. Not because you're dumb, because your instincts were built for visible danger, a lion, a car crash, a layoff. But inflation? Inflation is abstract, it's invisible, and your brain is terrible at respecting invisible threats. So you look at a $100 bill today, and your nervous system reacts like it's still a $100 bill from years ago. Same color, same size, same dead president. Your brain says, that's money, but the market says, not like it used to be. That gap between what you feel and what is true, that's where people get wrecked. Economists call part of this money illusion. I call it the middle-class hypnosis. You stare at the number in your checking account and feel relief. Okay, I've got 12 grand. I've got 20 grand. I'm safe. No, you are not safe just because the number is big. If that money is sitting still while prices move, then your safety is decaying in real time. That is the middle-class mistake. People hoard cash because they want to stop the panic. And I get it. Cash feels calm. Cash feels flexible. Cash feels control. But for long-term wealth building, hoarding too much cash becomes an invisible prison. Why? Because every month you sit inside that prison, your dollars lose a little more power. Not enough to scare you today, enough to weaken you over years. That's how people end up trapped in the dangerous illusion of being rich. High checking balance, low actual wealth. Big cash cushion, tiny ownership. A pile of dollars, no productive assets. And this is the brutal distinction most people never learn. Cash is not wealth. Cash is stored labor. It is time you already spent, energy you already burned, stress you already survived. So if you let that stored labor sit in something that steadily loses purchasing power, then you're not being conservative, you're leaking life. Now, let me be precise. I'm not saying cash is useless. Cash is necessary. Emergency fund? Yes. Liquidity? Yes. Short-term bills? Of course. But a giant pile of idle fiat is not a retirement strategy. It's a fear strategy. And fear is expensive. This is the section where I'm supposed to tell you to cancel Netflix, stop buying snacks, and brew your own sadness at home. No, stop being cheap. And I mean that with love, because cheap is not the same as strategic. Now, before the frugality police lose their minds, let me clarify. Budgeting matters, waste matters, consumer garbage matters. But the idea that your path to freedom is mostly about squeezing pennies while the currency itself is being diluted, that's fantasy. The latte factor is a lie. Or at least it is wildly oversold. Let's do the math. Say you buy a $6 coffee every single day. That's about $2,190 a year. Could you invest that instead? Sure. Should you be intentional? Absolutely. But let's stop pretending that your cappuccino is the reason housing, insurance, groceries, tuition, and healthcare feel like a boss fight. Your financial life is not collapsing because of cinnamon foam. Your financial life is collapsing because most people are trying to solve a structural problem with lifestyle trimming. That's like bringing a coupon to a currency fire. Here's the better framework. Mind the gap. The game is not, how do I hold on to dollars forever? The game is, how do I widen the gap between what comes in and what goes out so I can convert the gap into assets? That's changing everything, because budgeting is defense. Asset acquisition is offense. Budgeting can keep you from bleeding. It cannot by itself make you rich. You do not win by becoming the world's most disciplined hamster on a wheel. You win by creating surplus, then deploying surplus. That means, yes, cut the dumb stuff. Cut the subscriptions you forgot existed. Cut the flex spending that doesn't even make you happy. But do not turn your life into a joyless austerity cult. The goal is not to die with the world's cleanest spreadsheet. The goal is to own enough productive stuff that inflation becomes background noise instead of a life sentence. So if you want out, think bigger than coupons. Increase skills.
Increase income. Reduce fixed costs where possible. Avoid lifestyle creep. And most importantly, stop measuring success by how much cash you saved this month. Measure success by how much ownership you bought. That's the gap. That's the pivot. That's how you stop playing defense only. So what do you actually do? You build what I call a shadow portfolio. Not a fantasy portfolio, not a screenshot portfolio, a real one. A portfolio that lives underneath your paycheck and protects you from the silent theft. Step 1, keep cash for function, not identity. Have an emergency reserve. Have operating cash, but stop treating cash like the final destination. Cash is a parking lot, not a house. Step 2, start converting excess fiat into harder assets. That can mean broad stop exposure, that can mean real estate. And yes, for some people, that can include Bitcoin. Here's the Bitcoin rule. Don't buy what you don't understand. Don't size it so large that volatility destroys your sleep, but also don't ignore the fact that scarce assets behave very differently from endlessly printable money. You do not need to become a maximalist to understand the point. You just need to stop being 100% long on melting dollars. Step 3, automate the attack. Invest it. Don't admire the plan, deploy the plan. Every month, every paycheck, every surplus dollar that isn't needed for short-term survival. Because this is where the snowball effect finally starts working for you instead of against you. Inflation compounds against idle cash. Assets compound for owners. That is the whole war. One side is erosion, the other is ownership. And the end goal is not some fake online flex. It's wealth without burnout. Real freedom is not having $1 million sitting in a checking account while inflation chews through it. Real freedom is owning assets that defend your purchasing power while you sleep. Assets that work when you're off. Assets that let time become your employee instead of your enemy. So no, the answer is not to save harder forever. The answer is to stop confusing currency with wealth. Because once you see the fiat trap, you can't unsee it. And once you understand that the system is silently taxing your cash, the only rational move is to escape the trap by owning things the system can't melt as easily. If this video hit you in the chest a little bit, good. That means you're awake. Hit subscribe, join this channel, and let's build a life where your money stops dying in the dark. Let's escape the fiat trap.